get your child to listen. So you're here to learn to get your child to listen, which is fantastic. As a parent, it would certainly be a whole lot easier if my kids did what they were told the first time. And there are situations where it's important for them to be able to do that. But before I get into the secrets of winning cooperation, I want you to think about your long-term goals and values are as a parent. Think on that, put it in the comments if you'd like while I go over the agenda for this workshop. First, I'm going to introduce myself because we have a lot of new people to the group who have joined us just for this workshop. I want to go over why we want our child to listen and obey, the benefits of cooperation versus forced obedience, how to win over cooperation with your child, some tips for listening, and what our next steps are going to be after that. Because we don't want to just hear something once and give up on it. I want you to keep going and going and going. So who am I? My name is Meaghan Jackson. I am a gentle parenting coach with Joyful Mud Puddles. So if you've seen me around on social media, I am Joyful Mud Puddles. I help parents, mostly moms at the moment, but we do have some fathers who have joined us for the Joyful Parenting course that I've offered. And you know, parenting is hard, even before this crazy pandemic. Moms can get overwhelmed and frustrated. And I hear over and over again that the joy and the peace has just left their families and everyone's just fighting and you're going through the motions, surviving. But it doesn't have to be like that. Your life doesn't have to be like that. I understand because that was my life several years ago. And the transformation that I found in my family's life was so unbelievable that I couldn't help but not want to share that with the world, which is why I became a parenting coach, and I help you to transform your family's life through group coaching and through my website and everything. I also do a lot of homeschooling. So a lot of people in my group right now are homeschoolers. We spent the whole month of August on that. And we also do a lot of emotion coaching and working with kids too. So that's who I am. Oh, another thing you might want to know about me is that I have 3 boys. They are 12, 10, and 5. They've never been to school and they love homeschooling. Before that, I've had many jobs. I'm a just multi-talented, multitasking lady. I started as an engineer. Then I was in teaching. I have had a daycare here before, and I'm currently working, doing Joyful Mud Puddles, as well as doing the office work for my husband. We own a fire alarm inspection company. So there you go, that's me. Make sure you're putting in the comments, asking any questions you want along the way, and I will be sure once I end the slides to check in with you. Do you want forced obedience or cooperation? That's a really interesting way of wording it. So the question is, do you want blind obedience or cooperation? My friend Erin from Meta Mentoring worded it so well the other day on one of my posts. She said, forced agreement really isn't an agreement at all. So many times we want our children to listen, to obey, to do as they're told, and very rightly so in emergency situations. But a child who's always doing what they're told, is that cooperation? Is that agreement? Or are they just blindly doing what they're told all the time? So let's dive into that a bit further. Forced obedience is when, sorry, I'm just moving my picture out of the way so you can actually see all the words. There we go. As an adult, do you want to be in a controlling, forceful relationship? Do you like being told what to do all the time? A little part of us, when we're voluntold or forced to do something, we either fight back we feel terrible about ourselves, or we want to rebel a little. So think about that. What life skills are you teaching or aiming for in requiring direct, immediate obedience with your children? What battles do you actually want to fight? Because remember, children learn what they live. And if they are always controlled and yelled at, if they're threatened, if they're spanked or hit or beaten, that's who they become. That's what they're going to do to their children as they grow up. A child who is taught by manipulation through bribes and through threats is going to learn to be manipulative either as a child, and they'll bargain and threaten you, or they'll do that as an adult. So I'm wondering, what have you tried in your parenting? Add that to the comments now as well. I want to know, what have you tried for your parenting as far as techniques go? Who has tried times outs? Who has tried spanking? Don't be ashamed, we've all done the best we can, but I'm wondering, how did it go? Is it working for you? I mean, maybe for the short term, but therein lies the problem and the big difference between forcing someone to comply and having a child want to. If you've been trying timeouts and, threats or bribes or punishments, and it was working for you, then you probably wouldn't be in this workshop, would you? Most of the time, those might work. You've scared the pants off your kids and they jump to it and do what they want. But the next time that happens, you're in the same situation again and again and again, and you're not really getting anywhere, are you? And I'm guessing a lot of the time too, you're feeling like a pretty crappy parent as well. And then there's the guilt that goes along with that, and you might be triggered by your own childhood. Oops, sorry. Let's look then at an alternative. Let's look at cooperation. Cooperation builds healthy relationships and connections. Children will see you as a caring adult who wants the best for them. They will want to obey and want to cooperate because they know that you are in doing what's best for them and that you love them so much. They want to cooperate because they want that interaction with you, and that they're doing it out of love. Cooperation, though, involves being flexible, compromising, and having conversations. So it's more of a partnership versus being the authority, being authoritarian, and being in charge all the time. Cooperation also really helps develop that critical thinking, because rather than just being told what to do and blindly obeying, your child now has to be involved in this thought process and think, okay, what's my next step? What's involved? What do I need to do next? So here's the big secret. The big secret to getting kids to listen is children listen after they feel heard and listened to. Being understood, being cared for, being listened to is the biggest secret to getting your child to listen to you. And think about that too for you as an adult. When you feel understood in your workplace, when you feel understood in your relationships, then you're more apt to cooperate with that person and to compromise and to work with them. When you feel like you're being totally ignored, you want to stand your ground and do your own thing. You don't want to do what they want because you're mad at them, because you don't think they care about you. Well, your kids think the same way. So let's look at some ways we can win over cooperation with our children. And thank you to all who are watching. I will be answering your questions near the end. I very much appreciate that. Winning cooperation. Let's say we have a situation, you're trying to get out the door, they're not listening, they're not putting their shoes on. Check in with how your child is feeling. Pause a moment and be curious. Ask them in a nice, curious way, not in an angry way. Ask them how they're feeling. Find out why they aren't doing what it is that you asked. Show some empathy. Hear their side of the story. Even repeat their words back to them. Oh, you just started a new game and you really wanted to play. Oh, that must be so hard. You know, like, empathy doesn't mean that you're condoning or agreeing. It just means you can see their point of view. If it's a bigger situation where someone's not cooperating you and you can see that you both have needs that are needing to be met in that moment, share your feelings and your concerns. Again, that is after you have listened to them and taken time to understand where they're coming from. Then work together to solve the problem, either to avoid it from happening again. There will be instances when they need to follow directions immediately. There are emergency situations. There are, stop something right now. That's slightly different from what we're talking about, but I will go over some pointers on that as well near the end. But talk about it. Make sure your kids understand, look, we are in a partnership together. Most of the time when I'm asking you to do something, this is why. There are times when I need you to obey. And how do we know the difference between the two? Again, that's probably for a slightly older crowd. Younger kids don't really understand and wouldn't be fully into a big conversation on this. But the steps to winning cooperation are really the same. And you're probably thinking, oh, this sounds all great, Meaghan, but this is going to take forever. You do not know my child. I got a lawyer in my house here. They'll argue their way out of anything. And I get that. I totally get it. But, once you validate a child's feelings and they feel heard, the rest often, not all the time, but often just speeds right up. Like, oh, okay, you get that I was wanting to do something, but, I understand, okay, I'll move forward. So there are times that it can go pretty quickly, and sometimes these are like big discussions and we have to work together as a family, but there's no wasted time. I mean, that is life, that's learning. That's the whole point of parenting, is to go through these things and help them develop and grow into being an incredible adult. Now, oftentimes parents will come and they'll say, I don't even think my kids can hear me. Like, I've had their hearing checked, but really, it's not going through. Now, make sure that what we're doing here is developmentally appropriate. Younger children have less impulse control. So creating safe places for them to explore, redirecting them, that crowd, honestly, under 5, really, there's less impulse control. So you're going to have some added measures. You can't just say things once and expect them to totally get what you're saying. But make sure you actually have their attention in the first place. Get up and walk over to them. Don't just call them down the hall or yell their name and expect they were paying attention. They could be right in front of you, but off in their own little world, or concentrating and dreaming something up. One way to get their attention is to take a minute and connect with them. This is especially important if they've either been on screens or if they've been playing, or from a time of separation, say coming home from school, or you've been doing some work from home. Take a minute to get into their world. Connect with them, ask them what they've been up to, take a look at their cool project before you start giving out chores and telling them what's coming up next. I mean, that's like jolting them out of a dream. And all of a sudden they're like, what? Wait a second, you're telling me what to do. I don't want to do that. I was just playing Lego. Or I was just, you know, in the middle of a game and you're yelling at me to go do something else. Take the time to connect with your child. Even if that's a light touch on the shoulder, just so they, you know, oh yeah, you're actually talking to me. My older son often is listening to audio stories on his headphones. So yelling at him, by the time I get his attention, I'm angry, he's confused. Just take a second to go over, look into their eyes, keep your directions short and simple. Don't go on and on and on, because they honestly are going to miss half of what you said. Oftentimes kids only hear the last part of the sentence. And you need to listen out for, or be aware of children who have auditory processing or executive functioning challenges, those with ADD. Breaking these into smaller chunks, keeping your directions short, and checking for understanding are really important. And when you're checking for understanding, make sure you're doing this in an age-appropriate way. Checking in with my 5-year-old, I might have him repeat the instructions. My 12-year-old, that would be demeaning and embarrassing to him. So I'm just saying, you know, do you have any other questions? Some other strategies that would really help are for winning over cooperation. Say you've tried everything I suggested, you've listened to their side of the story, and you're struggling. Parenting, you need like a full toolbox. I love Jane Nelson's books, Positive Discipline. She has like 52 cards in one of her books, like strategies. You need all the different tools. One might work one day, one might not work another day. Humor and playfulness are fantastic ways to break the tension and to lighten things up. There's been several posts that I've seen in Facebook groups around getting kids dressed and getting them ready for bed. And I mentioned playfulness and what we do with our young one, and I was thanked. They said, thank you so much for this, you know, refreshing idea, just something different to try. So what we do around getting dressed when they're not cooperating and you're trying to get them ready, and I mean, sometimes just don't fight that battle. That's just the easiest. But we purposely put his clothes on wrong, and he thinks it's wildly hilarious. He loves being in charge of telling me, oh, mommy, you're so silly. My pants go on my legs, not on my head. And sometimes even now, he's 5, he'll ask me to do it, and we have a good laugh. And he's dressed by the end of it, and then we had some giggles. Another strategy is to be kind but firm. Sometimes it is really hard to meet everybody's needs at once. You may have a need to get to work on time, and your child has a need to play. It is okay to pick the most priority need, explain it to your child, and then maybe go back over it some other time later if you really had to get somewhere on time. Say, you know, I know that was really hard for you. You wanted to play. Maybe if it's a reoccurring appointment, you guys can come up with a better strategy. Maybe you could bring some toys for the car. You know, there's ways to work around these. We sometimes feel like we're stuck in a box. Being kind but firm means you can say with empathy, wow, you really wanted to play right now, and it's time to get in the car. You're understanding, you're being kind, you're not being mean about it, but yet you still have a boundary, a limit. Or you really want to throw balls, not in the house. We're going to do that outside. Another strategy is to tell them the do versus the don't. And that goes back to when I was mentioning the kids only hear like the last half of the sentence. So if you're always saying, don't run in the house, and they're still running in the house because they only heard run in the house, you could say, use your walking feet, please. or, you know, with the whole shouting, and then you're shouting, telling them not to shout, and everyone's yelling. You could, or I've been seeing recently about little ones touching everything, and you don't want them touching things. Then hand them something they can touch. Make your house a safe place, move things out of the way, hand them a ball they can throw if they're throwing toys around the house. And finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about things you can do for yourself. A lot of times in parenting, we come for the children. How do I get my kids to listen? And you quickly realize that 90% at least of parenting has to do with the parent. You can't control another person. We're always telling that to kids with coping skills. You can't control another person, but you can control your own reaction. So let's work on you for a minute. You need to be calm. You need to be that calm force in your child's life. You need to make sure that you are not freaking out and getting angry and screaming at them. Speak respectfully. Gentle answer is way more effective than harsh demands, because they pick up that energy, they pick up that tone, and they're going to be resistant. It has to do a lot with that fight, flight, and freeze. If they sense danger and fear, then they're either going to shut down, they're going to fight back, you know, they're going to freeze up on you. So you want to be calm. Don't make threats. They're often empty threats. Then they learn that you don't mean what you say. And when you try to enforce a limit, they're going to fight way back because they know that you are going to cave in. It's scary and mean. And it doesn't get you anywhere, because now you're not a person of integrity. You don't mean what you say. Also, don't overuse commands. We talked at the very beginning about how sometimes there are situations when you do need to give a command and it needs to be followed. Jumping out into the street or in a dangerous situation. So if you're always commanding, always telling them what to do, they start to turn off and tune you out. But if you are speaking your mind and compromising with them, when you do give a command, well, now that's when I'm serious. And I will take you seriously because you're not doing that all the time. Also, think carefully about what really matters most. Is this a battle you need to pick? Is this worth fighting for? Is it something we can let go? You're not weak as a parent for picking your battles. You're weak if, like, you know, you don't want to always give in to your child and be super permissive. But if it's a tiny little thing that you don't need to worry about, then let it go. Also, be humble enough to apologize. You are going to make mistakes. I make mistakes. None of us are perfect. It's the repair work that is so important that's often left out of parenting. And I know a lot of people whose parents left that part out and they're reparenting themselves. So be humble enough to apologize, stop yourself, even if it's mid-sentence. Every time you stop and you redirect yourself, you're building new neurons in your brain, new pathways of a new way of being and of doing things and of speaking. Also, be open to new solutions. Often if you're working on a situation with a child, they might surprise you with their answers, with what they come up with, and with the limits they put on themselves. You know, like my little one wanted to build a fire in the front yard the other day, and I really was not in the mood. And he came up with all these, all these criteria, what he was going to do, how he was going to prepare. I mean, if they come up with valuable solution, then why can't you do it? Just because you said so, or just because you just aren't in the mood? Really amazing solutions that we just don't give them the chance. And sometimes we can work really creative solutions in, bringing things with you to an appointment or playing in the car if they want to keep their game going. I mean, there's ways to work around these things. So what are some next steps? You've learned a little bit about, oh, I forgot to say something in the last slide. My apologies. Speaking respectfully and checking in with your children also really helps avoid that back talk. Oh, especially if they don't want to agree with you, your tone is going to mirror the tone they're going to give you. So if you're checking in with yourself and making sure you're using respectful tone, you're going to get that modeled back to you. So the next steps would be to slow down and consider your interactions. Keep learning. There are incredible courses, books, websites, podcasts, communities, everywhere. Keep learning, don't give up. Another great strategy is to journal. Keep track of your struggles, keep track of your wins, share that with others. Because the more you're doing this, the more you're writing it down, the more you're thinking it through, then you're not just going through the motions. You're actually changing on the inside. And I encourage you to get support as well. I don't want to be too self-promoting, but I do offer, there's a specific course on my website, extra resources. It's all about emotion coaching. There's coping skills, self-regulation, emotion coaching, empathy communication, and learning how to handle meltdowns. All of that in one easy to access website. So I encourage you to take a look at that. It's only $47 for the whole deal. I also have a website, a blog, and a podcast, and free printables all on my website. So there's a whole lot of free me going on. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, but I also wanted to highlight that I do individual and group coaching, and the Joyful Parenting course is starting very soon. I just finished with a Joyful Kids Club, which was emotion coaching for children specifically, taught with my oldest son so that there would be like a peer mentor. And that will be starting up again probably at the end of September. So if you're interested at all, I would love for you to connect with me. Or if you're not interested in working with me, but you want some additional resources, in my Facebook group, in the units section, I've linked to incredible books, courses, other people. I just want to make sure you are supported, however you get that support. So let me know how I can connect you with the right people. And just so you are aware, I do also offer free calls. You can send me a message, you can check out the Facebook group, and you can find me at joyfulmudpuddles.com. But really, however you get support, make sure that you don't just end here, that you reach out and work with others. So I'm going to make sure I check over on Facebook, see if there's any questions. And if not, ask me questions down in the comments and chat later. And we will make sure that, that I address all those things. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to give you a huge shout out as a parent who's taken the time to watch this video, because you are making a difference not only in your life, but in the lives of your children and their children, because you want to break from the traditional parenting of authoritarian and permissiveness that aren't working for so many generations. You are trying to change the way you're parenting, and you're showing so much care and love. Kudos to you. Keep being awesome. Take care, everybody, and have a joyful day.